Welcome back to these series of lectures. We've been talking about Columbus in some depth. We talked about his pitch, his maps. We talked about some of those factors that impacted his calculations in our last lecture. This lecture is called the Columbian Exchange. This is the key turning point in history. This sort of launches us into the modern era. If you'll notice, most history textbooks either begin or end around 1500. After Columbus, everything changes. So what we need to do here is to look and see what this exchange between the Old World and the New World, how it impacted the rest of the earth. The significances of the Columbian Exchange, I'm going to give you a few. First, this exchange led to what historians refer to as triangular trade. That is, it links the Atlantic basin together. The New World, North and South America, and the Old World, Europe and Africa. So for the first time, this Atlantic world, or let's put it this way, for the first time there is an Atlantic world bordered by great continents on both sides, with commodities and people in movement in this world. Second, great significance. The Columbian Exchange is going to lead to Atlantic slavery. This is going to impact Africa, Europe, and the New World. And we'll do a little separate lecture on Atlantic slavery. I'll just say for our purposes here that you can see this triangular trade in action as African slaves go to the New World to produce commodities, sugar, cotton, rice, indigo, tobacco. And of course these products or these commodities are then sent to Europe where they're turned into finished products and then sold or traded back to Africans for more slaves or sold to the colonists or the Europeans. So you see the triangular nature and the role that Atlantic slavery plays in it. Another significance, the Columbian Exchange is going to lead to the decimation of the people of the Western Hemisphere. This is one of the greatest demographic disasters in history. I'm sure it's comparable to the Black Death of the 14th century. The people of the Western Hemisphere have no immunity to the diseases that are brought over by the Europeans, beginning with Columbus and his sailors. And this was going to rapidly reduce the population of the New World, which in turn is going to provoke a desire for another source of labor, which of course will be found in Africa with the African slave system. Another significance of the Columbian Exchange, it's going to lead to a revolution in human diet. The Old World has food products that people in Eurasia and Africa had never seen, and vice versa. So now we're going to have potatoes and corn and many other things moving from the New World eastward to the Old World. And we'll have items from the Old World moving westward to the New World. So there's going to be a revolution in diet and a net increase in population because of this. Even with the destruction of the people of the Western Hemisphere due to disease, worldwide we're going to see a net increase in population. Other significances, the Europeans are going to bring this new powerful Christian God with them to the Western Hemisphere. This is going to be problematic because many of the Indians or Native Americans are going to associate this new powerful Christian God with the mass death that's occurring in their society. So you can see this is both a problem, an asset, and a liability for the Europeans as they are associated with this new, apparently bloodthirsty God that they brought with them. Now, I want to take just a moment and talk about domesticated plants and animals. The Europeans are going to bring to the New World just a wide array of domesticated plants and animals that we take for granted, but which did not exist here in North and South America. Cattle, horses, donkeys, mules, pigs, chickens, honeybees, silkworms, sheep, goats, water buffalo. That's a wide, powerful variety of animals that provide milk and cheese and labor and clothing and on and on and on. Can you imagine the impact this is going to have when Columbus, beginning with Columbus, these domesticated animals are brought to the New World? You have the rise of the Plains Indians, a nomadic people on horseback that had not existed before. You have pigs rooting up the topsoil and the ground of the New World, causing erosion, and just a powerful impact. The Europeans, of course, also brought domesticated grains with them: wheat, rice, barley, rye, oats. This, of course, is going to fundamentally change the diet of people in the New World. In the New World, there's only one domesticated grain, and that's corn. The corn's a heavy hitter. Today, it's hard to buy anything without corn in it. But the New World has a very limited number of plants and animals available for domestication. The animals in the New World that are domesticated are confined to just a very few. Dogs. Dogs are the one animal that is domesticated in both the Old and the New World. Llamas and alpacas, small pack animals indigenous to the Andes, very nimble of foot. They can negotiate those mountain trails. And then, of course, you have turkeys. And finally, guinea pigs, which is a standard dietary item in South America. So the people of the New World have fewer animals and plants available for domestication. The Europeans are also going to bring technology with them. The Europeans have metallurgy, the Indians do not. The Europeans are going to bring pots and pans. They're going to bring shovels and knives and hatchets and weapons and tools made of metal, firearms made of metal. The Europeans are going to bring fabric made from wool and linen and other fabrics and other materials that were not available in the New World. So this is a dramatic impact on the people of North and South America. I should talk for a moment here and a little more specifically about pathogens, these diseases brought over by the Europeans. The array of bacteria is pretty startling. The Europeans bring smallpox, and smallpox is regarded as the heavy hitter here. I heard one historian refer to smallpox as invisible bullets, because neither the Europeans nor the Indians have any notion that there's this invisible world of germs and bacteria that make you sick and kill you. So both sides have to ask, why is this mass die-off occurring? Let me see if I can find my list of diseases that the Europeans brought. Well, we have diphtheria, the plague, influenza. You can see that this is very hazardous to the people of the New World who are confronting things that they have never been exposed to. Technology, we talked about briefly. Culture, I mentioned that this powerful new European or Christian God is brought here. I want you to consider the impact that this new deity is going to have. In Indian societies, there is often a figure, we call him the shaman. We have other euphemisms for this, witch doctor, medicine man. This shaman is a central and powerful figure in Indian society. He's part priest, part doctor, I suppose, or part pharmacist. You might consult a shaman before undertaking some new venture. The tribe would consult a shaman, but perhaps before a move or going to war against another people. He has some sort of connection to the supernatural. He has herbs and bark and other natural ingredients that he uses to help cure what ails you. So he's a very powerful central figure in Indian society. Now, what happens to the shaman's power when these Europeans arrive with this new Christian god? Well, there's a mass die-off of the indigenous population. And the shaman has nothing in his pouch of herbs and bark that he can use to fight smallpox or any of the other diseases brought over by the Europeans. So you can see that this combination of new pathogens and a new deity who appears to be hostile to the Indians, you can see how this overturns Indian society, throws the indigenous people's worlds into chaos. I should mention, while we're talking about the Columbian exchange here, that the Europeans brought over the wheel. Now, this may seem strange, but in reality it makes perfect sense. Before the Europeans arrive, the Indians had no large domesticated animals with which to pull a cart. So they had no need for a wheel. Llamas and alpacas are not very good at this. What are you going to do? Gather 100 guinea pigs together to pull something? I don't think so. So once Columbus arrives now, and those that follow him, bringing these large domesticated animals that can be used as beasts of burden, suddenly the wheel becomes necessary in the New World. In closing, I'm just going to mention a few of the foods that were indigenous to the Western Hemisphere that are going to be taken back to Eurasia. I mentioned corn. Corn's very important. Potatoes are extremely important. Potatoes, of course, grow in the high altitudes of the Andes. There are many varieties. Potatoes are easy to store. They're high in caloric content. You can keep a people fed with beer and potatoes for a long time. And you'll see potatoes making their way back to Europe, where they'll have a big impact. Beans, peanuts, cassava, squashes, these things are all indigenous to the New World. Pumpkins, avocado, pineapples, tomatoes, chili peppers. And then some items that initially will be regarded as luxury items: tobacco, chocolate, vanilla. These are all plants and foods that was indigenous to the New World. Now, we talked about the diseases that the Europeans brought to the Western Hemisphere. They did take some diseases back to Europe, diseases that were indigenous to the New World. I'm just going to mention a couple of them: hepatitis, polio, encephalitis, tuberculosis, and then syphilis as well. I remember reading a paper years ago. A historian made an argument that the brothel trade in Europe had collapsed by, I think, 1520. The argument being that the Europeans, beginning with Columbus, brought syphilis back to Europe and rapidly made a trip to the brothel very high risk, and because of the spread of syphilis. And of course, the Europeans all blamed each other for the spread of this. The French called it the Italian disease, and the Italians called it the French disease, and on and on and on. So let me sum up this Columbian exchange. This is the key turning point, launching us into modern history. This draws the world together. It increases our scientific knowledge, our geographic knowledge. It begins a mixing of cultures and technologies and people. And I guess we're still engaged in this sort of globalization. I guess this is the beginning of globalization. So what we'll do is look at two consequences of the Columbian exchange. One will be imperialism, and I'll talk about the middle ground there. And then we'll take a few minutes and talk about Atlantic slavery also to wrap up this semester. So I'm going to close there, and we'll talk about the middle ground next. Thank you.